Guys and girls, we get asked often by buyers, sellers, people in our community about fire risks, being close to the bush, flood risks, getting flooded in a 1 in 300, 1 in 25. We're going to cover these topics tonight and let you know how these things affect your property value when selling or when buying.
Good evening. You've got the duo again, guys.
Hello. Welcome back to 2025.
Yeah. Wow. It's certainly started not quite the way a lot of people would have anticipated, but this morning we were talking about with the lovely Trevor Bowen.
Amazing guy.
What an amazing guy. For those of you guys that did not see this morning's Morning Minutes, you can go back through our social media and you can watch it there. Trevor is a full-time firefighter down in Victoria, and the guy is also a full-time real estate agent. He's a gun in his area as well.
A lot of work.
Yeah. I don't know. Actually, one of the questions I asked Trevor was, when do you sleep? Because if you're doing that many hours in two full-time jobs, I don't actually know when the guy sleeps.
Yeah.
But God, he gave some invaluable information today, obviously with, bushfires being such a massive topic of conversation.
Yep.
We thought that we'd actually address tonight about what happens when a natural disaster takes place in your area. What effects does that actually have on things like not just the environment? Obviously, that's a major factor.
Yep.
But how does that affect property values? What happens to the property market? What happens to the rental market?
Does it ever recover?
Does it ever recover? Yeah. And not only that, but, many of you guys will know we're Northern Beaches agents and, you're either in a flood zone or a fire zone. And, so we're obviously selling properties in these areas where, so many properties are so prone to this kind of stuff.
Yep.
It's funny, actually, I was having a conversation the other day with someone about the Northern Beaches, and they actually had no idea that there was so much bushland on the Northern Beaches.
Surrounded. If you look at it, and I guess it's very rare sometimes you actually do maybe
Mark just pumped the air up. That's nice.
It looks like a bit
blowing in the wind.
Marilyn Monroe. But I think it's a lot of people just don't even know. So you drive through suburbs, you'd never think it's surrounded by bushlands. You drive through suburbs, you never know they flood.
Yeah.
Handy fact for us, and whenever I talk to people about flooding, I discuss our office. Now, our office in our area, there's a 16-story, 17-story building. There's two of them, the Meriton building. When you drive through DY, there is no way that you would think it gets affected by natural disasters. Now, some and there's a thing called immunity. So when often you have to build, you have to have an immunity to fire or immunity to flood. So they actually make you build differently. Before, in the olden days, they sort of tolerated it, build it where you want, bad luck if it floods. Now there's a lot of metrics and measures that are in place when you're getting a DA, a development application on a property that the council makes you do. For instance, our office is built 1.5 meters above ground level. Now, when you're a shop, that sucks, because if you have one step when you're a retailer from the ground level, that's bad news. We've actually got 6 or 7 steps. Why? It's about the immunity. If it's a 1 in 25 or a 1 in 100 year floods, the council make us build higher. So there's a lot of little things out there that you may not know.
And it's funny, you look at an area like DY, and for any of you guys that are watching that don't know DY, it is a bustling suburb. It's full of shops. It's got high rises. In a million years, you would never anticipate that a suburb like DY would ever be affected by a flood. You think that's ridiculous, that's overkill. But it would be about, 3-4 years ago now?
Yeah.
We had one of those 1 in 300 floods.
Ooh,
and
I think it was a 1 in 25.
1 in?
25.
What, when there was the river rapid going down Pittwater Road?
Yep.
And I can tell you now, our shop didn't get affected, but there were many, many shops that actually were wiped out.
Cars were being lifted and moved down the road.
Yeah, 100%. Pittwater Road, to give you guys an idea, is the main arterial road, one of the main arterial roads that cuts through the Northern Beaches. And there was almost like a river rapid going through there. So, can it happen? Yes. Does it happen often? No. Does the council and the government put precautions in place
Yep.
to protect people? It certainly does. And, it can be very frustrating if you're looking to build a property. People just go, there's so much red tape. This is ridiculous, all the things that I've got to do.
Landslide.
Yeah. But then you look at what's going on at the moment in Los Angeles, over, in California, and you go, okay, I'm actually starting to understand this.
Yep.
Where you've got this major city that is, it looks like certainly on the news that the whole place is up in flames. And you just think to yourself, how in the world does something like that happen? But, obviously we've been talking a lot about this. I've been, watching the news as everyone has.
Been glued to it.
But yeah, these homes, because they're so earthquake prone over there, they're built out of wood, a lot of them.
Now, guys, this is a live show, so if you have any questions for real estate agents, long-serving real estate agents that you want to ask, feel free. We'll address it live. But Lisa, I've got a question for you.
Yes.
Would you buy in a flood-prone area or a bushfire area with all of your knowledge?
Definitely.
Yes.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep, definitely. So look, and I've sold many a property in those areas. As I said, the Northern Beaches is rife with flood-prone properties and bushfire properties. And you see the things that people have put into place. I mean, I'm selling a property at the moment. It's sitting on 22 acres.
Yep.
It's up in Terry Hills. It is surrounded by bush.
Yep.
The owners built the property 20 years ago. It is double brick. And it's got the most incredible sprinkler and shutter system around the property.
Yep.
So, people do things and they put precautions in place when they're living in these areas.
These days.
These days they do. But there's so much more, Mark. I actually put into, I'm not going to lie, I've been going to be totally transparent. I put into ChatGPT about what happens to areas and communities when they're affected by natural disasters. And there's so many things. I mean, the natural things that you think of are, it's going to affect, the property market. It's going to affect the rental market. I want to talk about that in a sec. But there are actually insurances is the other thing that comes to mind.
Yeah.
But you look at flooding, for instance, and, this is something that I didn't even think about, but not only can it cause foundation erosion, but you've got to worry about mold. And the big thing is electrical. I know we had a flood, Mark, many, many years ago. And I must say,
it cooks a lot of things.
We had a huge flood at our place. This is going back years and years ago. And at the time, Mark was at work. And I remember thinking to myself, who the hell do you call when your house is flooding? Who do you call?
Fire department.
Cool. Well, but most people...
You wouldn't think so.
Most people wouldn't
think
so.
I remember talking to a fire a couple of years back, and they said one of the biggest call-outs they get is hot water systems blowing in unit blocks. And because it's just this constant trickle of water, they've got the authority to go in and stop it. Whereas, you're not going to call a locksmith. Strata's not going to help you in those times, so it's that case. But one thing I want to ask.
Yep.
You said that you would buy in a fire area and you would buy in a flood area. I've got to qualify that. A lot of beauty comes with the bush. A lot of beauty comes from a lake.
Yep.
So I think at the end of the day, you've got to weigh up. There's beauty for potentially your whole property ownership, and you're never going to see it flood. But there is that risk, and that's the gauntlet that people run because they want to live on a lake. They want to live a half a kilometre from a lake or 300 metres from a lake. So I think people are prepared to walk that fine line and take that risk to buy. But I think that you've got to actually really understand it. Fortunately, when I was in one of my majors at school was studying Narrabeen Lake. I did geology.
I'm having a laugh because I've seen your school report, Mark, and it was... pretty sure it was straight Fs.
I found it interesting, so I did all right. But I studied that lake, and it's incredible how many properties are surrounded by that.
Yeah.
Surround that beautiful lake, and again, it's just a risk that everyone on the Northern Beaches
takes. It's a risk. I
reckon you're buying for cheaper because of these risks.
Well.
But then I think you're paying a premium because you're on the water.
Well, it depends.
As an example.
You look at what happened in Collaroy, right? as an example. You look
That's
what
a
happened.
big one.
You would never,
That's a big
ever
one.
think that you're going to
Yeah.
buy there on the beachfront
Yeah.
and something is going to take place.
Erosion.
And for any of you guys that don't
Wow.
actually know what took place on Collaroy Beach, just Google it and you'll have a look. They have now put precautions into place. The community were up in arms about it, and obviously it cost an absolute fortune, but they built these massive seawalls there. But there were houses that got totally wiped out there.
Yep.
Now, has that had a major effect on those sale prices? It did for a while.
I think it still does.
It did for a little while,
I think
but
you're buying
there's precautions.
you're buying a cheaper beachfront. Because if you're buying an area that doesn't get affected, like Collaroy again, but in the basin, it's not part of that natural erosion for somewhat reason. They are more premium homes, but
Yeah.
those ones that got affected, they're cheaper homes. So I know we sold to a professional couple that bought that beachfront
Yeah.
at the time of the erosion. I thought they bought it incredibly.
They did,
high.
but it had just taken
Incredibly
place. It had. I reckon that what happened down there at Collaroy with those houses getting washed away, that had only taken place, I think it was about a year prior, and they were willing to take the gamble. There's no doubt they absolutely did purchase that property for a discounted price as a result of that scenario.
But it's gone up relatively.
I was just going to say, as the
Yeah.
years roll on, though,
Yeah.
it certainly still does go up. And then, look, we have so many areas across the northern beaches. We've got Narrabeen, you've got on the lakes, you've got flooding that takes place. People still do get insured. I've sold many properties around there, and people are nervous. They're like, well, am I even going to get insurance? And then, obviously you've got a lot of bushfire prone areas, so much bush on the northern beaches. It's incredible.
Is a bushfire area going to go up less than a non-bushfire area?
Look, I think it's just a matter of supply and demand, like it always is with real estate. You've got a very niche market that wants to live in the bush. When you're living in an area like the northern beaches, it's not like living up, somewhere that's quite regional where it's just a given that you're going to be living in bushland. Some people want to be living in the bushland on the northern beaches, still with that proximity to the beach as well.
You didn't answer the question.
Ask me again.
Is a non-bushfire area going to go up as much as a bushfire area? Is your capital growth going to be better in a non-affected area?
It's got to be. What do you say?
I personally think it's relative, and I'll give you an example. I remember, and this is a perfect example, but it's not about flooding or any fire or any of these things. But I remember when I was in my early career, 2 sales reps, one bought in a bad street in one suburb. Suburb was Freshwater. It was the busiest street in Freshwater. One bought in the best street. And the interesting was when they sold 5-10 years later, they sold at the same time, they'd spent the same amount on the property. And I thought, surely the one that was in the best street in Freshwater is going to perform better than the worst street in Freshwater. And I've seen this happen time and time again.
Yeah.
They tracked, yes, it tracked very well, the good one, but the one in the busy street tracked a similar percentile growth. I believe that all of these factors are already built in, and I'm personally opposite what you're saying. I reckon that it's all relative. So if you're buying in a flood area, you're buying it for cheaper, you ride the same wave that the flood area, non-flood area, right? I just believe it's the same.
Look, it's all going up.
Yeah.
It's all going up. There's no doubt about that. And also Flavio has just made a great comment about the Lismore floods.
Yeah.
I mean, the absolute devastation that took place there. There's no doubt that something like that is 100% having an effect on property prices.
Yeah.
As what's going on over in California at the moment, you can only imagine that property market over there, I would think, is going to take a big, again, this is just my opinion, but one would think that's going to take a hit for quite some time. But I read an article today just going back to California and what's going on over there.
You remind me to bring that one back up.
Which one, Lismore? Or
California.
California, yes, about the property market. Yeah. But I read an article today where these people that are now displaced with respect to what's gone on with their homes, a lot of people are now looking for rentals, and landlords are saying, well, that house was $20,000 per month to rent a couple of weeks ago.
Yes,
now I want $35,000 a month.
Yes.
So where the property market's taking a hit, the rental market is going to skyrocket.
What about rental? You're right.
Rentals is going to skyrocket because these people are displaced.
Yep.
And listen, guys, guys, you know, it's not, I know what we're seeing on the news is all the multi-million dollar homes,
Yep.
but there's people that are also living in non-multi-million dollar properties that also need to obviously go somewhere to live.
Yeah.
So that rental market is just going to get absolutely smashed. I think they're talking about, isn't it some 10,000
Yeah.
homes?
There's some obscene rents being paid for people that have been displaced
Obscene.
into new accommodation. It's amazing.
So the rental market is absolutely going to go through the roof. And again, just reading this article today, you know, they were saying, like we do in New South Wales, they've also got what's the word I'm looking for? Rental
regulations.
sorry,
Yeah,
that's the word
yeah.
I'm looking for. Rental regulations where, you know, you can only charge a certain amount of rent. You can't just, you know, be charging obscene amounts. But who's looking at the moment? These people
those
need somewhere to
times,
live.
yeah.
Landlords are seeing this as an opportunity. Call it whatever you want.
Yep.
But, you know, that rental market is going to absolutely go through the roof. But property market, do you reckon that property market's going to take a hit for some time?
Well, this is what I reckon. Guys, listen close. I believe if it's an area that is commonly known for flooding or commonly known for, you know, it's not a bush, you can, you know, there may be a fire. I think there's like a natural expectation that's been built in for maybe 50 years, right?
Yep.
100 years, whatever. Where I think it gets shot through the foot on this example is California. There is no way that I thought that was going to happen. I think that's the dangerous part for me when
Yeah.
investing in property, because, you know, sure, I know that this is a flood area. I know this is a fire risk area, but I think parts of America that have actually that it happened to, there's no way I would have ever fathomed. So bringing that back to Sydney, New South Wales, northern beaches, I think if it's an event that's just completely, you know, COVID was one of those things, which was probably ended up being more temporary than permanent. But yeah, I think it's interesting with these disasters, guys. And how can we have that discussion tonight? We don't even know those things.
No,
you're not going to know.
But I agree with you, Mark. I think the biggest thing there is that people were totally blindsided. Again, if we draw back to our market, Northern Beaches and Sydney, people are going, okay, Narrabeen, we know there's certain areas there are floods near the lake. You know, we know that there's certain risk involved if you're going to be buying on Collaro Beach. It's been so well publicised and documented what happened many years ago there and the destruction there. You know, and again, you know, fire-prone areas where you've got these heavy bushfires. But when you're going into an area where they just really don't have a history, where major fires have ripped through these areas.
Yeah, it's a catastrophe, natural disaster that's completely unexpected. Well, hey, we can poke the stick at them in every way.
How long would you say, Mark, and again, this is just your opinion, how long would you say when something catastrophic like that happens, whether it be those major fires in California or a major earthquake in Japan or a major cyclone in Fiji or whatever it may be, how long would you say it will take the property market to recover from something like that, just in your opinion?
I don't believe it ever does. I think those things go through generations and are passed down through generations. And I think, look, if we're indexing it to dollars, it gets better, it gets easier. People forget, but I think there's always an impact. But I think tonight I really wanted to talk about the areas that you know we expect, and you know there's a natural disaster and it's a calculated one. But the ones that are completely uncalculated, I don't think we can probably go down that rabbit hole.
No. Yeah, I agree with you. So, look, there's so many other factors that are involved, guys, when natural disasters take place. Obviously, you've got the physical damage that takes place to a property.
Yep.
And again, when you're looking at an area, we keep obviously drawing back to California because it's just recently taken place and it's an absolute, as you said, Mark, catastrophe. But, you know, you look at that, I know we were talking about it yesterday, you've got trades, you've got builders, you've got so many things. It's just putting everyone, it's working these industries to the absolute extremes.
Yeah.
And then, you know, these builders and tradies and people like that just start charging astronomical amounts as well. You know, up go, you know, everything from carpet to paint to wood to absolutely everything.
I like Flavio.
Flavio's great.
Flavio's a man of
what else has Flavio got to say?
He's a man of common sense. And guys, as you can see, this is a live show. Make any comment you like. We'll talk about it. We'll address it tonight, relevant to the topic.
The key point is that you might want to read that. I don't have my glasses
The
on.
key point is that you can't become complacent or take things for granted that it will never happen.
Yes.
Spot on.
Yep. Flavio, honestly, I could not agree with you more. And again, I think that's the thing that caught us the whole world by surprise with what's going on over there. But the best piece of advice this morning that I got, that I will be taking with me forever, is what Trevor Bowen, the fireman/real estate agent
Amazing
that
man.
we had on the show this morning, he said, get out early. Get out early.
Life.
The big mistake that we all make, I think naturally, is that we want to help.
Especially men.
We want to,
They're hunters.
we want to help, we want to
Protect.
save, that's exactly right. But he said the people that he sees that survive these things are the ones that get out early.
Don't be a hero.
No, definitely. So I would definitely be taking that advice with me. Decreased property values, I think we've already discussed that. Insurance costs and availability.
Yep.
So you can only imagine what those insurance premiums are going to look like in those areas that were affected. We certainly know what happens in an area where we operate on the Northern Beaches to areas that are prone to bushfires and prone to floods. There's no doubt that, those homeowners are paying a premium there. Displacement and recovery time. So we talked about what displacement looks like, Mark, with respect to
rent's going through the roof.
That rental market is going through the roof in California. It absolutely is. But not only that, Mark, just something that's come to mind. If you're a landlord, I'm thinking that your world's best investment as a landlord wasn't to purchase a $20 million property and rent it out. Like, how many of these luxury homes, I'm talking at the higher end, I'm well aware that there's, lots of other people that have been affected. But how many investments can they...
units to...
Yeah. Where do they go?
Homes. Yeah, they're all displaced.
Where do they all go?
Yeah.
That's a
I'd be
huge
moving
thing.
to another city if I could.
Well, you got to wonder.
You're going to get nailed.
You got to wonder about that impact on local infrastructure.
Yeah.
Roads, bridges, utilities that are damaged and destroyed.
Yeah.
Schools, hospitals, and public services that are affected. I mean, environmental changes in the landscape, soil erosion, like things that have actually happened. That's right. To all the areas that are surrounding that, water contamination, air quality issues, market demand shifts. Like, there's so many things here. And then the long-term rebuilding costs.
So, guys, hopefully we helped you tonight. I think as real estate agents talking about on the Northern Beaches, I think what, in summary, what I could say is, if there are things that are known, which most of them are, that are calculated, really do your research. I believe you are buying it for cheaper. I believe it has as much capital growth as anything else in that area or that precinct, district, Northern Beaches Council, whatever, the whole area. But I think really do your calculations when you're making that risk. Don't think that's not going to happen, but just sort of be ready for stuff. So, me personally, 32 years a real estate agent, I'm up for flood risk, I'm up for fire risk, but I'm going to be prepared. And some good advice, from professionals out there.
And a lot of and just finishing off on that, Mark, a lot of these properties, and again, I think we're almost experts, if you like, because the Northern Beaches is so full of flood and bushfire prone areas. That we're selling in all the time and we're managing property in all the time. Can it happen? Yes. Does it happen often? No. Have these properties continued to go up in value? Absolutely. Have people enjoyed amazing lifestyles in these areas? Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so it's just a matter of do the pros outweigh the cons? And that's it, but there's a risk involved in anything. When you're living, purchasing, renting, managing a property. But property has always proved to be a very, very solid investment. That is 100%. Anything else you want to add, Mark?
No, I'm up for it. Like, I think, look, we actually own a property that's affected by flood.
And bushfires.
And bushfires.
Yep.
And, we sort of, I guess, we went into it knowing, and we think it's going to be a wonderful capital growth property. It has been a wonderful capital growth property, but you just got to be careful. And I feel sad for when people walk away from a deal because of these risks. Because the whole reason they were enticed or introduced in that property is because it was a beachfront, or because it was close to the lake, or because it had a beautiful bushland view, and they walk on that reason. It's like, yeah, you're actually you're buying it relatively.
It's always the weekend
What's that?
conversation. I often say that everyone becomes a real estate, property, and financial expert, particularly on a weekend at a dinner party.
Yeah.
People go, "You're going to buy there? That floods." It's like,
Oh.
okay, well, how often does it actually flood?
Look-
Because if it only floods 1 in 100 years, I think you're going to be okay.
And that one that we sold a couple of years ago, Collaroy Beachfront, can you imagine the amount of times they've told people that they've bought this house
Oh
or they
my
live there?
gosh.
And people go, oh, you had that really bad erosion. It's just like every time you tell someone you bought, it's like, oh, wow, that's beautiful on the beach. That actually almost got taken away about 5 years ago. So
Yeah.
10 years ago. So, yeah, it's interesting. But
Yeah.
I still like it.
Absolutely. Guys, hopefully we've added some value here. And again, we just want to finish off by saying our hearts absolutely go out to every single person
Absolutely.
that has been affected. It's hard enough to watch sitting in the comfort of our lounge room.
Yeah.
It's hard to watch, with your hands over your eyes, just going, how did this even happen? I can't even imagine what it must be like for everyone over there. So please understand that our hearts absolutely do go out to every single person that's been affected over there, and well done to every single person that's been on the ground working in those awful conditions as well.
And there's a lot of other places around the world that are going through the same thing. If you can help. You know what I mean? I guess
Yep, that's it. Guys, have an awesome night.
Love
See
ya.
ya.
See ya. Bye.